Welcome to Life Stories. Here, we don't just tell stories. We tell truths, the kind that hide in boardrooms, behind friendly smiles, and deep inside people who give everything and receive nothing in return. This is a story about being erased, about working hard, playing fair, and still getting left behind. But it's also about rising, about taking back your voice and writing your name where it belongs. So sit back, take a breath. Because this isn't just another workplace drama. This is your story if you've ever felt invisible.
And it starts now.
I used to think that saying yes was a strength. Yes to helping. Yes to stepping up. Yes to staying late. Yes to proving I was the one they could count on. Yes to showing them I was a leader, not in title but in action. And in the beginning, it felt like it worked. When I first became a director at the company, I remember walking into that new office, glass panels, new business cards, that director of strategy and ops title on the wall, and thinking, this is it. I made it. But it wasn't long before the shine wore off. I remember the first time someone said, "Can you help with this? I know it's not your area, but you're so good at keeping things on track." It was Sarah from marketing. Their campaign was 2 weeks behind schedule, and no one could figure out how to untangle the mess.
Sure, I said.
I'll take a look. That look turned into me redesigning the entire launch workflow, coordinating vendor calls, editing copy, and prepping their senior lead for the executive review. The campaign launched on time. Everyone clapped. Sarah got praised. The CMO smiled and nodded. No one mentioned my name. It was fine. I didn't need it. I was a team player. That's what I told myself. Then came the finance rollout. The VP, my boss, walked into my office with a half-empty cup of coffee and said, "The finance team's understaffed for Q3. Think you could jump in and oversee the dashboard reporting?"
Sure, I said.
How long do you think? Maybe a couple weeks. It turned into 3 months. 3 months of meetings at 7 a.m. with the accounting lead, rebuilding broken spreadsheets, tracking metrics across 5 departments. I wrote the presentation for the board update. My boss delivered it, using my slides, my numbers, and my talking points. Afterward, the CFO said, "That was the clearest analysis I've seen in 2 years. Nice job, Alex." My boss smiled. "Appreciate that." I stood 3 feet away. He never turned to me. Still, I said nothing. I worked harder. When the new director joined the team, bright, ambitious, and completely overwhelmed, guess who was asked to help her transition? "Just show her how you manage your projects," my boss said. "Help her get settled." I did more than that. I cleaned up her backlog. I organized her roadmap. I created onboarding materials for her team. I even handled 3 of her major deliverables while she got up to speed. She got kudos in our all hands. A round of applause. She smiled at me afterwards, said, "Thank you for being such a rock." A rock. Solid. Silent. Heavy. It wasn't always malicious. Sometimes people genuinely forgot. Other times they just didn't care. But the message was the same. The more I did, the more I disappeared. There's this phrase I used to hear. Do the work, let your work speak for you. But what happens when someone else steals the microphone? My days blurred together. Morning coffee turned into working lunch, turned into late-night logins. I skipped workouts. I skipped weekends. I missed my niece's birthday because I was finalizing a change request for a vendor integration I wasn't even supposed to be managing. My friends noticed first. "You still alive?" one texted. Or, "Did you move into the office?" I laughed it off. Just busy. You know how it is. They didn't. But the hardest part wasn't the hours. It was the silence. That growing, echoing absence of recognition. That dull ache of watching others speak your words, present your work, wear your impact like a tailored suit, while you sat there, applauding like everyone else. I tried to justify it. You're not doing this for credit. You're doing it for the team. This is leadership. This is sacrifice. But it felt less like sacrifice and more like erasure. Like I was writing chapters in someone else's story. One afternoon, I was walking past a conference room. The door was ajar. I heard my name. "She's good, yeah," my boss said. "But she's more of a support player. doesn't really drive strategic initiatives. I stopped walking. I couldn't move. Support player? I had built half those strategic initiatives he was presenting. I had driven them when he was too busy or too vague. I had handled everything from stakeholder alignment to process documentation. But in that moment, I wasn't a leader. I was a footnote. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking, how did I get here? How did working this hard result in being invisible? I wasn't even angry. I was hollow. Not because I'd been used, but because I had allowed it. And still, the next morning I showed up on time, laptop open, coffee in hand, smile practiced. Because that's what I did. That's who I was. At least, that's who I thought I had to be. There was this one week I'll never forget. It started with a Monday 8 a.m. meeting that turned into a crisis call by noon. A vendor botched a system integration that impacted 3 departments. I jumped on the issue before anyone asked, worked through lunch, canceled 2 of my own team's one-on-ones, and stayed until 9 p.m. that night coordinating fixes. By Wednesday, it was resolved. By Thursday, my boss presented it as a great team effort led by operations leadership. My name wasn't mentioned once. That Friday, we had a leadership offsite. You know the type, fancy conference room, catered breakfast, whiteboards with buzzwords like synergy and ownership. The CEO came in to kick things off. She walked the room, greeting each of us. When she got to me, she smiled politely. And remind me, what team are you with again? That moment felt like someone knocked the wind out of me. My mind raced. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't even know what I do. I said, strategy and ops. I support the cross-functional rollout initiatives. She nodded. Ah, right. Good to meet you. We had met 3 times. Later that day, the VP of product stood up and praised the rollout framework we'd just deployed. The templates saved us weeks of confusion. Massive shout out to the operations team for building this out. I waited. I had built those templates from scratch. I had redesigned the format, tested it across 4 teams, built the documentation library, and trained managers to use it. Still no name. Just operations. That night I went home, opened my laptop, and looked through my sent emails. 37 project updates, 15 documented process improvements, 5 slide decks for executive reviews. All in the last month. Every single one had either gone through my boss or been presented by someone else. I scrolled through Slack. I typed my name into the search bar. Out of hundreds of messages over the past 2 weeks, only 4 mentioned me. 3 were for me. My partner noticed I was quiet that night. You okay? They asked. Yeah, I said. You've been on edge all week. I hesitated. I don't know. I think I'm just tired. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't being honest either. How do you explain the exhaustion of not being seen, of giving everything, and having it feel like it vanished into someone else's shadow? The hardest part was I didn't hate my boss. I had admired him, actually. He was charismatic, sharp, calm under pressure. People liked him. He made decisions quickly, communicated well, kept his cool even when projects hit the fan. But slowly, I started seeing something else. Something that made my stomach twist. He never created. He curated. He borrowed ideas from others, packaged them neatly, and delivered them as his own. And I was his favorite source material. I started noticing patterns. He'd hover behind my desk when I was screen sharing in a huddle. He'd ask, "Mind sending me that after?" Then reword it and forward to leadership with no attribution. I even caught him once walking out of a 1:1 with me, straight into a meeting with our VP, using the exact language I just coached him on regarding a budget discussion. Verbatim. The more I noticed, the less I could unsee. Every compliment he received echoed with my fingerprints. Every win he celebrated carried a piece of my sacrifice. But to speak up felt dangerous, political, risky. What would I say? He's using my ideas? What if they thought I was petty, jealous, disrespecting the chain of command? I told myself, just keep your head down. Focus on the work. Eventually, the right people will notice. But deep down, I was starting to doubt that too. One morning, A junior analyst from another team dropped by my desk. "Hey, just wanted to say thanks," she said. "The resource planner you built saved our team. We were drowning in overlapping requests before." I blinked. "Thanks," I replied, surprised. "I didn't know you were using it." "Oh, your boss sent it to us last month. We thought it was his." She laughed, lightly, innocently. I smiled back, but inside I felt something shift. It wasn't just about the credit anymore. It was about identity, ownership, the loss of self in the machine. I started pulling back, not from work, but from the illusion. I stopped giving everything away freely. I stopped sending drafts to my boss before meetings. I started tracking everything: dates, documents, deliverables, even comments made in hallway chats. Not because I was bitter, because I was preparing. Something had to change. Not tomorrow. Not eventually.
Now.
That night, I sat down with my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top, I wrote, "What I do that no one sees." Then I started listing it out. Every system I designed. Every deck I ghostwrote. Every problem I solved at 1 a.m. Every moment I stayed quiet so someone else could speak. The list grew.
And grew.
By the time I finished, it was 5 pages long. I stared at the screen, suddenly overcome by something I hadn't felt in a long time.
Clarity.
That was the moment.
Not a meltdown.
Not a grand confrontation. Just stillness. Like standing in the center of a storm you didn't know you were in, and finally seeing the debris around you. And realizing you built the house, but someone else lives in it. The next day, I walked into the office like I had every other day. But something had changed. Not the clothes. Not the smile. Not the to-do list.
Me.
I had stopped trying to prove I was worth something. I had already been something all along. And now I was going to make damn sure the world saw it too. I started noticing things I had once ignored. Noticing how my boss would always linger near my desk right before a big deliverable was due. Noticing how he'd ask me to send over what you have so far, only for those same slides to show up, modified just enough to be unrecognizable in his presentations. Noticing how the meetings I wasn't invited to were always the ones where my work got discussed. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe this was all just miscommunication. A system glitch. Something unintentional. But that belief started to crack the day I walked past the executive conference room and heard my own words. It was a Thursday afternoon. I'd just wrapped a planning session with the data team, discussing how to improve reporting turnaround. I had spent hours the night before drafting a document, a new feedback loop process for faster iteration, tailored to our unique org structure. Something lean, scalable, and intuitive. As I passed the glass-walled meeting room, I caught a phrase I'd coined in that doc: reducing latency between insight and action. I stopped, looked inside. There he was, my boss, clicking through a deck I'd never seen before, explaining my framework with polished authority. My stomach twisted. He was presenting my strategy, my language, my structure, without me in the room, without my name anywhere on it. And worse, everyone was nodding. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't passive oversight. This was active erasure. I wasn't invisible by accident. I was invisible by design. I started tracking everything. Every idea, every note, every email, every timestamp, every file version. I created a ghost file folder on my desktop, a graveyard of the work I had created that never made it with my name attached. It grew faster than I expected. There was a moment, a few days later, that made my blood run cold. I had designed a new decision tree model for handling cross-functional conflicts. A niche but important tool that mapped accountability and timing more clearly than anything we'd had before. I shared it with one product manager from another team, quietly, casually, as a helpful resource. 2 weeks later, I was forwarded an email chain by accident. A director from marketing had replied all to my boss. "Love this decision model. Great work as always. You always know how to simplify the complex." I reread the thread 3 times. The attachment? My file. Unedited. The signature? His name. The walls began to close in. I started to feel like I was living a double life, ghostwriting the entire operational infrastructure of an org that didn't even know my name. It was surreal, like being the architect of a city you weren't allowed to live in. And the worst part? I was starting to question my own reality. Was I overreacting? Was this just corporate life? Had I misunderstood how visibility worked at this level? Or had I let someone build their career on my back while I sat quietly, applauding their ascent? At home, I became quieter,
Distant.
one night, my partner asked, "Is it just work? Or is something else going on?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. How do you explain to someone that your face is disappearing from your own success? The following week, I ran a test. I created a new process optimization tool, a quick dashboard mock-up using live ticketing data to flag bottlenecks. I didn't tell my boss, didn't mention it to anyone above me. I sent it to one team lead who'd once asked for something like it and said, "Feel free to try it out. Let me know if it helps." I watched, waited. Exactly 5 days later, it showed up in a leadership Slack channel, posted by my boss. Trying something new to improve ticket flow visibility. Early feedback welcome. He had renamed the file. Changed, nothing else. That was the confirmation I needed. I sat at my desk, heart pounding, not from anger, but clarity. This wasn't in my head. I was a ghost in the room, and he was feeding on my silence. No more. I started building my case. Not for HR. Not for revenge. For myself. Because if no one else saw the truth, I had to. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining it. That I wasn't just some bitter employee desperate for validation.
So I documented.
Everything. Screenshots. Email headers. Version history logs. I even started sending summary emails after calls, just to have a paper trail. Per our discussion, here's the workflow I proposed. Small things. But they added up. Over time, I created a private folder called The Real Story. It wasn't just files. It was a record of identity.
Of work. Of proof that I mattered.
At first, I kept it all to myself. Then one day, something strange happened. A junior manager from the engineering team pinged me.
Hey.
Quick question. That resource tool your boss shared. Did you build that? I paused. Why do you ask? Because he demoed it today and couldn't answer half the questions about it. Just said, "We're still evaluating," and moved on. Yes, I typed. I built it. Thought so. Silence. Then, people are starting to wonder. That message was like a crack in the glass. Tiny, almost invisible. But once it's there, the pressure starts to build. Over the next few weeks, similar messages trickled in. A designer asking about a file format no one else could explain. A PM curious why the data rollout templates had my file naming conventions. Even an intern reached out after a sync-up, saying, "Wait, you're the one who made that intake form?" I thought. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The thing about ghosts is they're hard to ignore once you realize they're in the room with you. I started speaking more during meetings. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just presence. I'd chime in to clarify timelines. Correct vague statements. Drop in reminders like, "As mentioned in the process doc I shared last week." My boss noticed. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, how he stopped turning to me for support mid-call. He tried to keep up the act. But something had changed. I was done being silent. Then came the executive roundtable. My name wasn't on the invite list. It never was. But this time, the head of HR, someone I'd quietly collaborated with for months, added me. "We're discussing rollout logistics," she wrote. "You should be there." I sat in the room, listening, watching. Half the conversation revolved around systems I had built, processes I had streamlined. My boss presented. Smooth as always.
Polished. Practiced.
Then the COO asked a question he hadn't prepared for. Something technical. Something detailed. He stumbled. Looked around. Our eyes met. "I'll take that," I said. I walked to the screen. Clicked through the data. Explained the structure. Showed them the file history. Outlined the logic. The room went quiet. Then the COO said, "That's solid." Who built this again? I looked at him.
Calm. Steady.
I did. No one interrupted. No one corrected me. No one needed to. That day, I didn't just break the silence. I broke the spell. After the meeting, no one said anything. But their silence was different this time. It wasn't ignorance. It was recognition. Later that evening, I received a calendar invite. Strategy review, Director Lead, you. From the COO himself.
No middlemen. No filters.
Just me. And a seat at the table. For the first time, I wasn't the ghost in the room. The shift was subtle at first. People started replying directly to my emails instead of CCNG my boss. Junior employees began tagging me in feedback loops, asking, "Does this match the intake format you built?" The new director next to me, who used to bypass me entirely, started knocking on my door, saying things like, "Can I get your thoughts on this before I pitch it up?" She called it respect. I called it correction. My boss noticed, too. He started acting different. Suddenly, he wanted to collaborate more closely. He began adding my name in meetings, awkwardly, unnecessarily. He'd say things like, "As my name probably mentioned earlier," or "This idea evolved from our team's brainstorming, especially with my name's input." It was strange, like watching someone try to stuff toothpaste back into the tube. But I didn't react. I didn't need to. I had already started writing my own name on every slide, every process, every idea. And people saw it. The biggest moment came during a company town hall. The CEO was presenting our strategic roadmap. One of the slides showed a system architecture that had my fingerprints all over it. She paused. "I want to highlight the team behind this," she said. "And especially the director, who engineered the cross-team collaboration to make it happen."
She turned toward me. "Thank you," she said.
"I see the impact now." And just like that, those words I thought I'd never hear came. "I see you." After the applause, my boss gave me a pat on the back. Forced.
Hollow.
He didn't say much. Just nodded. Smiled. But behind his eyes, I saw it.
He knew the game had changed.
The ghost he'd used to build his kingdom was now standing in the daylight. That night, I walked home under a sky lit with city noise and office windows. I felt lighter. Not because justice had been served, but because I had reclaimed my voice. Not to shout, just to exist. To be heard. To be seen. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere. The funny thing about being invisible for so long is that once people start seeing you, they can't unsee you. After the town hall, everything shifted. I wasn't just the quiet one who helped a lot. I became the name behind systems people depended on. Projects started getting routed through me directly. Mentions of my name popped up in meeting notes, in feedback surveys, even on Slack. And that's when the panic set in, not mine. His. It began subtly. My boss started double-scheduling meetings over mine. He began correcting me publicly on tiny details, even when I was right. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence to clarify things I'd just said. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Until one Friday morning, I walked into a leadership sync and saw a slide that looked eerily familiar. It was mine. Again. Only this time, the formatting had been changed just enough to make it look new. He was still trying. Still pretending the glow hadn't shifted. After the meeting, I confronted him. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just two people in a hallway. "Why did you reuse my slides without credit?" He smiled. "You work for me, remember?" "No," I said calmly. "I work with you. And if you want to keep pretending otherwise, we'll have a very different conversation with a different audience." He didn't smile back. That was the moment I knew. The power dynamic had flipped. He wasn't leading anymore. He was clinging. Over the next few weeks, I stopped filtering myself. If a meeting had my work in it, I showed up. If someone gave him credit for something I'd built, I corrected them. Firmly, politely, but directly. I didn't throw him under the bus. I didn't need to. I just told the truth. And the truth was louder than anything he could fake. Then came the quarterly performance reviews. Traditionally, they were a formality. A round of applause from your manager, some safe goals, a pat on the back. But this time, the CEO requested to sit in on mine. I was surprised. Then I wasn't, because when I walked in, she didn't say hello. She said, "I want to understand why I've never seen your name on a strategy document before last quarter." I paused. My boss shifted in his chair. I looked at her, then at him, and then I spoke. I didn't tell her he stole from me. I didn't list every file, every late night, every meeting I'd been excluded from. I just told her what I did.
Clearly, factually, confidently. No blam, no emotion.
Just the work. By the end, she nodded. "That's all I needed to know," she said. He was moved to a new role 3 weeks later. Lateral move.
No announcement.
No reason given. Internally, people called it a soft demotion. Publicly, no one said a word. But in every room he used to walk into with authority, people looked past him.
To me.
I never gloated. Never celebrated. Because what happened wasn't a victory. It was a reclamation. The breaking point wasn't just his. It was mine. And I broke through. After he was moved to another division, there were no fireworks. No all-hands announcement. No HR email. He just disappeared from my calendar. No more shadow hovering behind my presentations. No more rewrites of things I'd already written. No more second voice speaking over mine in meetings. At first, it felt strange. Like walking through a house after the power's been cut. You realize how loud the hum of machinery was, only when it stops. People kept asking me, "How do you feel?" I never had a clean answer. Because I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt free. Free from the constant need to defend my own worth. Free from the fear of being forgotten. Free from the pressure to prove, every day, that I belonged. What surprised me most wasn't how the company responded. It was how I changed. I stopped volunteering for every little thing. Not out of bitterness, but because I learned that value doesn't come from being everywhere. It comes from being present in what matters. I learned how to say no, how to let silence sit, how to pause before answering just to remember my own boundaries. I stopped letting guilt drive my calendar. I also started mentoring. People began coming to me not just for help, but for clarity. They wanted to know how to survive in the noise. And I told them the truth. Don't just build. Sign your name. Don't just show up. Speak up. Don't just do the work. Tell the story of the work. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I never said anything. If I had stayed the ghost in the room. Maybe I'd still be quietly fixing things while someone else took the credit. Maybe I'd be bitter. Or burn out.
Or gone.
But I'm still here. Still standing. Still me. And that's the difference. One afternoon, I ran into him in the elevator. We hadn't spoken since his transition. We stood in silence for a few floors. Then he turned and said, "You played it well." I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with pity. With peace. "It wasn't a game," I said. And walked out. Let him keep the spotlight if he wants. I've got something better. The truth. And this time, everyone sees it. Legacy. It's a word I used to think belonged to CEOs. Founders. Authors of great change. Not people like me. People who work quietly behind the scenes. Who build scaffolding others stand on. Who say yes even when no one's looking. But I was wrong. Because legacy isn't about titles or plaques. It's about impact, and the courage to make sure that impact has a name. After everything, I didn't get a promotion. No corner office. No balloon drop. No headline on the company newsletter. But what I got was more valuable. I got to rebuild my narrative. I got to walk into rooms and know, truly know, that I was there because I belonged. Because my work spoke loudly. Because my voice carried weight. Because I had finally stopped making myself small. I began to teach my team differently. Not just how to build systems, but how to own them. Not just how to execute, but how to frame what they do so others understand its worth. We started a weekly wins roundup. Not just numbers, but names. Who led what? Who solved what? Who deserved to be seen? At first it felt awkward. Like bragging. But over time, something changed. People sat taller, spoke clearer, asked to present their own work, defended their own ideas. I had broken the silence for myself. Now I was breaking it for others, too. A junior analyst, smart, shy, and overworked, once stayed after a presentation and said to me, "I used to think people like me never get noticed." I smiled. Then we need to change what getting noticed looks like. My old boss. He's still at the company. Still polite. Still political. But now, when people ask about the systems we use, the strategies that drive us, the voice behind the structure, they come to me. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. Sometimes I still hear that voice in my head. "I don't know what you do here." I let it sit there for a moment, then smile.
Because now,
Everyone knows. Legacy isn't what they remember about you when you leave. It's what they can no longer ignore while you're still here. And I'm still here. Visible, valued, vocal. You just heard the story of someone who gave everything and almost disappeared. But here at Life Stories, we believe something simple. The truth always finds its way to the light. If this story hit home, if you've ever worked hard and gone unseen, know this. You're not alone. And your story, it matters. Don't let anyone write it for you. Don't let silence become your legacy. If you found strength in this voice, subscribe. Stay with us. Because we've got more stories that the world needs to hear. This is Life Stories.